This is where it all starts. Every timeline, every creature, everything begins with you. Sonic.EXE, or 2011X, is where the EXEs and horror versions of Sonic started to appear. The name 2011X dating to when everything started. Back when creepypastas were getting popular, things like Slenderman and Herobrine, there was one creepypasta people began to know. Created by JC the Hyena, this bloody-eyed hedgehog took the internet by storm and eventually was put into a game that would appear in mine and many other people's childhood. Though this creepypasta's story was absolutely horrendous and was filled with cliches, it still grew in popularity. And I think it's because of MYT5 Crimson going on to make a game about Sonic.exe. And this is where it introduced a lot of people to this horror version of Sonic. And for the longest time, that's where it ended for me. I've liked Sonic all of my life. And when I found out there was a spooky version, I was oddly interested in it. I mean, I was already into creepypastas, and are you kidding me? There was one about Sonic? Now I'm interested. I mean, to make Sonic have blood come out of his eyes and terrorize people from his game, it's not exactly a super original concept at the time. I thought the original game, would be the end of it. But as time went on, there turns out to be a lot of depth to Sonic.exe and the history of him. But we'll have to save the specific troubled history for another video. For now, what exactly happened to Sonic.exe and what's going on with him today? The original creator of Sonic.exe was exposed for, let's just say, not being a great person, and in response to rightful backlash, he released the character to someone else. Was it initially going to Joe Doughboy at first? I believe he gave ownership to SRL October 23, who in turn passed it to Shay after her own controversy, who was divided the ownership with Joe Doughboy and Raven. Yeah, so at least I'm pretty sure that's how it went. I was looking on the wiki. Again, not really wanting to delve too much into the drama aspect of it, except it's a lot more than drama. It is really bad. It's bad. Sonic.exe was shrouded in controversy because this character has had a troubled past. Interestingly enough, however, it's kind of like Logan Paul. No matter what this guy goes through, it just seems like he continues to grow. The character would be taken in by Joe Doughboy, developing a new canon story for Sonic.exe, even introducing a new game in 2023. That's right, Sonic.exe has survived the test of time, has upkept its relevancy today. So much so, I've gotten lucky enough to build my content and platform off of video essays like these, talking about various different entities and Sonic.exes made by other people within the community, and it all started with 2011X. This entity continues to thrive even with its troubled history. But now that we understand what happened to him, let's get into the point of this video. What is the story of 2011X so far? And we'll also talk about the new game of Sonic.exe and what we can expect in the future. X, better known as Sonic.exe, is the main antagonist of Joe Doughboy's 2023 remake of the original Sonic.exe game, known as Sonic 2011 as part of the Sonic.exe continuity. X is a being whose fascination with humanity and the Sonic franchise created a destructive mix, forming a vessel for an entity whose goals is to spread and cause as much pain and suffering as he can. He does this by playing various games, some subtle in their sadism, but always rigged to torture and manipulate the player, using the souls of his victims to fuel the vessels to play along over and over again. This was read directly from the wiki. It's a little lazy of me, but I want to make sure I can get it as accurate as possible. To my understanding, X simply lives to satiate his sadism, to welcome you to his game and torture your soul within these Sonic vessels until the games aren't fun for him anymore. Though, should things go differently than what X plans, he'll just end you out of spite. He is quick to anger or be impatient. This is who X is. Though, according to the wiki, the section that explains his lore may be outdated in some regard, so I'm not exactly sure how accurate I can get it. But X simply claims humanity to be his own and rules over it in some regard. According to the Lord X Wiki, which is just Sonic.EXE, but in the future. Originally, it was a potential timeline, but now I'm pretty sure that it is his official timeline. There are alternative versions of him, but 2011X is to become Lord X, but it just depends on the continuity. At some point, he creates the Guardians, and in this timeline, creates EXE. EXE was X's first creation, but EXE didn't have the same image as 2011 did, and has been banished to another world. This will likely be expanded on in the future, but for now, X has one goal in mind: to play his games and rule over what he believes is rightfully his. Though the story of X may get a rework and his current story is outdated, there's no denying the influence this character has had. And with the new age of 2011X came a new game that was inspired from the original Sonic.EXE game. 2011X found someone to dump the game on GameJolt, and you, the player, are able to play the game with him. You can even go to the Game Jolts, and the person posting it seems like they are rather remorseful or regretting that they had played along in his game and dumping it to him. That, or they were forced to put it onto Game Jolt. I can't say for certain what the story of X is. It's said that the official story goes like this: X comes across a programmer as he's not able to exist within the human world to his knowledge. So he has a human programmer make a disc. This disc is to serve as his clean slate, his world, and his ability to teleport or essentially transfer himself to the real world. Honestly, I'm a little confused by it because I'm pretty sure some of this stuff is from JC the Hyena's canon, but it's been like shifted a little bit, and like I said, it is outdated. What we do know is that we, the player, have come across the Game Jolt page, and this is Sonic.EXE taking souls one after another to put them in the vessels and have them play certain games. So that's what I'm gonna stick to. Though you are welcome to better explain it in the comments, and I do apologize if I did a poor job. But we do have a basic understanding of who 2011 is, and now let's talk about the game that he's from, because I feel like the game played a big part in his popularity and also is a big part of his story. So let's play the game, shall we? Ah, yes. True to the classic, we start off with the rather flat-looking green hill zone. Now, there are a few secrets we can find, but as per usual, let's progress to the game normally. There's a neat detail with Tails' face, shifting expression as he continues forward. I think this detail is something that remains consistent and actually displays fear. After a long while of walking and some dead animals and blood scattered about for decoration, we find X standing at the end of the level. The music here is a little unsettling and honestly messed with my ears. And in another crazy detail, Tails actively tries to run away, and you, the player, have to force him to approach Sonic. You're an awful person now. Good job. I think this is really cool because it displays these characters having their own free will, and you're actively telling them to go into the thing that they don't want to, and X doesn't do anything until you do. Though once dragged in, being the gentleman X is, asks us if he wants to play a game with him. Maybe this won't be so bad after all. You know what, X? Sure. I'll play hide and seek for the 50th time. A nickel every time an EXE has asked me to play hide and seek. Can we play something else, please? It's more like tag anyway. We're brought to a burning hellscape. The noise of fire and odd music fills your ears. Tails seems like he wants to go to the right pretty bad, and I'm starting to regret having false optimism. The custom sprites here are super well done, and it only gets better from here. Continuing forward, we have Tails pick up speed, till we're stopped with the words "time over." Following this up is a pretty awesome looking visual of X and a chase sequence. What's cool about this is, not only does Tails' facial features change, but how he picks up speed can change as well. Taking your hand off of the keyboard causes him to do this sort of run while he stares at the camera. But if you try to move forward, his tails don't start at the fastest speed. Rather, it builds into that. This is such a small but really neat detail. Unfortunately for Tails, and what follows is Tails getting his neck snapped in a new scream. pretty scary. The Tails portion is done much better than in the original, and the small details here are actually pretty great. But what's going on with Knuckles now? It's virtually the same thing, but this time you're forced to fight against 2011X. And that doesn't end well for him either. So that's 2 down and 1 to go. A cool thing about this section is the curtain and the newly made custom background. This part signifies the end of our little game with X, and the curtains will come to a close. Reaching the end of the level, X opens his chompers and devours our beloved Egghead. He will be missed. But we don't have much time to grieve for him, as we're met with a really solid Sonic.EXE. Definitely an improvement from the original because the hyper-realistic one just wasn't it. Honestly, the art here is pretty nice. He writes on the screen, "I am God," before attempting to devour you. This breaks the screen, and if you wait long enough, he'll say either "keep this interesting for me" or "ready for round 2. What's really cool is that the game will close, but the words and crack on the screen won't unless you go into Task Manager. I really like when EXE games do this. It's almost immersive in a way. Not that I necessarily want to be immersed in Alan's shoes, but you know, it's still pretty cool. And those were the standard routes you could take. But as I mentioned before, there are secrets that you can access and have more gameplay. That's right, actual gameplay in the EXE game. As Tails, walking to the left, we're met with the wall. Now, if you haven't played this, you might be thinking, well, you can't spin dash in this game, but this wall looks like it can be broken. Well, dear viewer, all you have to do is gain some momentum, then press forward, down, and right key to hit these. Do this twice and we're taken to the zone Go Back, which has every EXE fan's worst nightmare, actual platforming. And it sucks, but really adds to the experience. The one thing that scared me was dying and having to restart, because there were no checkpoints. The platforming here is scarier than X. I kid you not. The amount of times that I died. It took me literally over an hour. But with some precision and timing, trial and error, you make it. Though you may have died a lot, surely this unlocks some kind of extra secret that you wouldn't have otherwise got. Wrong. The brimstone calls your name. Whatever that means. Guess what? That's it. You're on to the usual route. No more secrets. I can't help but to feel like, oh, it was a bit more playtime, but yikes. Going to the left as Knuckles causes us to fall and the screen to glitch out, bringing us to this zone. Luckily, there isn't any pesky platforming that may take you an hour to complete, but you end up being really bad at the game, so it ends up taking you like at least 2 hours to get the footage for it, and you're streaming the whole time and chat is making fun of you. Just a hypothetical, maybe. But like, you know, you don't have to do that because there's no platforming here. Instead, we get dialogue. X tells us that we delight him. What a nice thing to say. Like the gentleman he is, he basically invites us to live in his world. Like, that's so nice of him. He basically says, this will be your new home now. I don't have to worry about not having a home. And after a little longer, while walking, we see static. And after that, text saying found you. Then we're back to fighting X as usual and failing miserably. There are no secret routes that we can take as Eggman, but he does fall on his face when you try to go up the stairs, and that's pretty funny. Now, you can also wait out the timer for all characters, a special message prompting for Tails, but pretty much no one else, as it just forces the game to go along. I also think this is a good time to mention the victims' names, as you may have noticed in the bottom left corner. Alan, Dave, and Paul. These characters serve as puppets, and soon you will join them. While the story of X will likely get updated and changed, at least a little bit, there's no doubt that this creepypasta has come a long way. 2011X becoming his own entity and avoiding, mostly, all the cliches he was criticized for in the past. Whether people like it or not, 2011X has caused a surge throughout the internet, inspiring tons of people to make their own versions of Sonic.EXE. He created the subgenre EXE, and that by itself is amazing. Though I'm uncertain of the future of Sonic.EXE, there is another canon that 2011X has taken a big part of. Something that blew up his popularity in the first place, at least. You could say that this specific thing has contributed to his uprising, and I'd be kind of silly if I didn't mention it. 2011X's other canon is a what-if story. what would happen if Sonic.EXE was introduced to Friday Night Funkin. Though this isn't canon to his official lore, it is a timeline that exists directed by Joe Doughboy himself. The Sonic Legacy mod, disguised as Rodent Rap, or rather Rodent Trap, is an FNF mod that will be released in the future. This mod asks the question of what happens if Sonic.EXE is officially introduced to Friday Night Funkin. Now, we all know the popularity of Verse Sonic.EXE, but this starts us off with the original 2011 X, whereas the other one starts us off with Zenough, whatever, however you say it. The songs here are actually really good, and I may be biased when I say this, but it's one of my favorite FNF mods out there. The game does an amazing job of disguising itself, and at first, it tricked me. This mod was one of my first introductions back into Friday Night Funkin' and was one of the first videos I had to do well on my channel. I dare say this was the thing that sent me down the EXE rabbit hole. And I'm sure a lot of people could say the same. Regardless of that, 2011X was a part of my childhood. And though I only remember him being Sonic.EXE, he now has a name and an even better story than he did before. I say even better, but it's way better. In the past, I didn't really know too much about the creepypasta itself. I do, however, remember watching people play the original game, and I still have fond memories of it. 2011X is one of the only creepypastas to still thrive in the way it has, or have such an active community. It continues to give us different variations and stories of this beloved sadistic being, and has given me a platform to make content on. However, one thing I wanted to bring up that is still musically connected and is also still canon to Sonic.EXE is the lyric video. X's Lament, lyrics written by Raven. This song displays the true nature of Sonic.EXE, or rather 2011X. It tells us how X is delighted to have played a game with us, but knows that it has to come to an end because he's going to keep moving on to victim. You could interpret this as X's transition into Lord X. Perhaps he's going to keep Alan around and not Paul. There's no way to tell just yet what victims stay and what victims go. One thing I do know about this song is that it's actually really good. It takes the original Sonic.EXE song, or the song in Paul's level, and has this beautiful art piece, piano, and lyrics to go over it. And in case you didn't know, X actually knows how to play the piano and likes to play it, so that's the only cute thing about this guy, to be honest. Now, there is another way of saying this song, and according to my research, it could just be that this song, the overall message, is X doesn't necessarily have to rely on people to be dumb and play his game. Essentially, he's saying that there's always going to be another victim. There's always going to be another person. So he's basically saying to each individual person, one after another, that you enjoyed this game of lies. There's always going to be people who are interested in horror. There's always going to be somebody who's going to find my game. That's why when I say goodbye, it means nothing to me. I plan to cover more EXEs in the future, so subscribe. I make a lot of Sonic.EXE content, and I hope you'll stick around. This may not be the last time that I'm going to talk about 2011X or Sonic.EXE, so you'll just have to stick around and let me know all the things I missed in the comments, because there's going to be quite a bit, and I may have to make a part 2 to this video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Huge shout out to my members and patrons. At the end of each video, I'm going to shout them out in a Sonic voice, so if you want to hear your name in my shitty Sonic voice, become a member or a patron today. Banan Boy, Brantley Young, Neko Wan, Jennifer Fisher, Boyfriend XML, Cheesy, FrozenBluberry, and Leon. Thanks for being a member. I appreciate it. Become a new member today.